Real Christianity is not merely a religion, it is a relationship with a person. It is an intimate love relationship with God. Through this relationship, God reveals His will and invites you to join Him where He is at work. Then you come to know God in a more intimate way by experiencing Him at work through your life.
Today I want to start by telling you a story. There was once this man who was driving this incredible Corvette, beautiful red, top down, hair blowing in the wind, driving this Corvette up this mountain. As he was winding up this mountain, all of a sudden a car came and was intersecting with him almost, and then the last moment he tried to dodge the truck, and in doing that, led himself and the beautiful red Corvette over the cliff. Now, it's not all bad, because what we find is that in the last moments, the guy was able to reach out and grab a hold of a tree that was coming on the outside of the cliff. And as he looked down, he saw the beautiful red Corvette crashing down to the floor, thousands and thousands of feet below. And the man is hanging there, and he starts to scream. He says, "Help, help, someone help me. Please, someone help me." But all he heard was the echo crashing against the canyon and coming back to him. Nobody was near. Nobody was there. So he cried out, "God, God, can you help me? God, please, do you hear me? God, can you help me?" And suddenly the clouds began to roll together, and a voice like thunder said, "Yes, I can hear you." And then he cried out, he said, "God, God, will you help me?" And God, calling back to him, says, "Yes, I will help you. But do you believe in me?" And the man cries out, said, "Yes, God, I believe in you." Then God returns, he says, "Do you trust me?" And the guy, of course, says, "Yes, God, I trust you. Please hurry. Help me. Please hurry." And then God, in this thundering voice, looks down at the guy and says, "Then let go." You can imagine the guy's still hanging there, and he pauses for a moment, taking in what the Lord had just spoken. And we get to cry out, "Is there anyone else? Please help me. Is there anyone else?" This story is so true in so many aspects of our life. I feel like as our lives continue to go on, as moments begin to move in our life, and God begins to work in our lives through this relationship that He has given us, I feel like so often we find ourselves in this crisis of belief moment. Could you imagine hanging there on the cliff and you're like, "God, that is not at all what I need to do. That is not at all. That doesn't make sense, God." But He just simply says these words to that man, "Let go." And what we find is that all throughout our life, what we know for certain is that we will face moments in our life where we are faced with this crisis of belief. When we're faced with a decision, when we're faced with this fork in the road type of moment. Now, is it always going to be this life and death situation like the man hanging from a tree? Absolutely not. Sometimes it's just small decisions, small forks in the road that come at us. So whenever God asks you to do something, whenever God calls you or God invites you to join Him where He is working, then we're faced with the decision. We will either choose to let go, and there's so many things that you may say that you may have to let go of whenever you make those decisions, and you will have to choose which path that you will go down. And you're going to be faced with so many different crises of belief, so many different thoughts flooding your head. But when God asks you to join Him, you are faced with a decision. And a decision that does two things. Number one, a decision that will test your faith. Just like the man crying out to God for help, God asking him, says, "Do you believe in me?" And here's what I find is that our belief can be very strong. We can say, "You know what, God, I believe in you. I know you are there." In this particular instant, he can literally hear God's voice. He can literally hear God's voice. And so you have to ask yourself this question: do I believe that God is real? Do I believe that the voice that I'm hearing, the calling on my life, is a real calling from God? But then it leads you to an even bigger question. Do you trust that God will be with you, that God will protect you, that God will heal you, that God will work through you? You see, the guy hanging from the tree, he believed that God was there. He could literally hear God's voice, but the problem became all about trust. Could he trust God, that what God said, that he would help him, would also follow through from the actions that followed? And so we see that this decision tests our faith. Do we believe that God is real? Do we trust that God will say what he is going to do? And then the second thing that this decision will lead you to do, it will lead you to take an action. It will lead to some sort of action. Now, if you are following in the footsteps of the man hanging on the tree, this action may actually be an action of disbelief, an action of choosing the road that most do travel, choosing the way in which you know God may be calling you in one direction, but the crisis of belief, you just can't see how God could pull you through. You just can't see where the end is. And so you just simply say, God, I'm not doing that. Or God, I'm not living that way. Or God, I'm not choosing to put these other things in my life down. God, I'm choosing this path. And your disobedience is an action moving yourself away from God. Or this decision could lead you to the other action that we hope is so true in all of our lives. And that is the action of obedience. The action of obedience. The action of really putting your belief in God and putting your trust in God into action by taking that step towards God. You see, following Jesus in our life is built off of faith and action that leads to obedience. And we pray that in our lives, whenever we are faced with moments of uncertainty, whenever we are faced with crises in our life that challenge our beliefs, that challenge our faith, we can be reminded of Hebrews 11:1 that defines faith in this way. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. You see, in this moment with this man, he had all the assurance in the world that God was going to come through for him, that God was going to help them. Even though he couldn't see God, even though he couldn't see what was going to happen if he let go. It says here that true faith is letting go. Whenever you know and you believe that God is real, even though you can't see him, and you trust and believe that what he is going to do for you and through your life will all be good, will all be for not only your benefit, but for the benefit of him, and will bring him great glory. So I ask you, in this lesson of our Experiencing God series, we have just traveled so much in what it means to have a relationship with God. And we see that God is inviting us to join him in the work that he is doing all around us. But oftentimes this invitation brings upon this crisis of belief. And so I want to ask you, what crisis of belief are you facing right now? And where is God calling you in your life to simply let go?